Hello, everyone. I'm Sherry Huss, and I'm here with Live Labs. My colleague and partner, Itamar Kabovi, is joining me. And
Hey,
today,
everybody.
yep. Hey, Itamar. Itamar is actually in New York. You can see the Strand bookstore, iconic bookstore right behind him. And today we have the pleasure of talking to one of our innovators and event professionals. And I would like to introduce Julie Clark from FinancialForce. So Julie, welcome.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about what do you do at FinancialForce these days?
So I have the opportunity to lead our global events team. FinancialForce is based in San Francisco, and our team is based out of San Francisco. We also work with an excellent counterpart out of our EMEA office as well.
Excellent. And so what's happening in the event world these days?
Oh, a lot. I mean, with the shutdown of the events and the events community in the February and March timeframe, we really felt like I think the sky was falling and Rome was burning all in one day. And things were just being canceled left and right. We had a lot of pressure from our executive and finance teams to tighten up our contracts, see which shows and opportunities that we could get out of without many challenges or legal liabilities. So there was a huge effort to make that transition happen. As soon as we had that cleaned up, the next challenge was how to pivot our live events to virtual events so that we could stay continuing to have the conversation with all of our prospects, customers, and partners.
Great. And you had an event scheduled for, let's see, I believe it was June 1st through 4th in Las Vegas. What happened?
We did. So it was our annual customer conference for about 2,000 people at the Aria Resort and Casino. And we did start to have some initial conversations with the Aria about transitioning dates, pushing things out to later this summer. But as soon as Las Vegas really shut down the strip for health and safety measures, the conversations got to be a lot easier and a lot more flexible. So since we already had a contract with the ARIA signed for May of 2021, we were able to really transition a lot of those costs and liabilities to that later event. So it actually went from a really, really difficult discussion to actually a very happy ending. So we're really pleased with the results.
Excellent.
It's so interesting, Julie, because I come from a theater background, and it's been interesting in our conversations with lots of people in the industry. And I think for those who don't know, Julie's been everywhere. You've been at Cisco, you've seen the world in your career. It's not like you've come from one place.
Mm-hmm.
If someone said to a theater company, okay, guys, pivot, you're now a film production company, that would be hard. Like it's a different set of skills. And it would, even if the actors were brilliant and they were great directors and everything, like suddenly you have to just organize it differently. The order of things has to be different. Like, how did you teach yourself that? And how did you it's like such a rare time in a job, a high-powered job, where you're sort of in the, peak of your career. And then someone says, guess what? Your whole job is totally different now. Yeah. Even though your goals are the same, your commitment and accountability is the same. Well, your whole toolbox was thrown out and someone just threw in a new set of tools that's you knew about a little bit, but you never really felt like that was the sweet spot of what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious how that must have been a very intense, for everyone in the industry. I feel like it must be, people just use the word pivot,
yeah.
Oh yeah, you just sort of turn your head and start doing that. But that's a massive change.
Yeah, so I can definitely answer that on a professional and a personal level. It was, let me start with the personal front. When we first started the shelter in place, we're suddenly working from home. I personally have been on the road almost every week for 2 years, and suddenly I'm home making dinner every single night. managing kids, 2 teenagers. My sweet husband is a high school math teacher. He's suddenly working from home, figuring out how to teach online and do all of the digital convergence that's immediately required of teachers. It was extremely, extremely stressful. And as I said, the first couple of weeks as we were working through this was just all about contract negotiation and securing our financial terms and obligations. As soon as kind of the next wave came in to build this virtual event, I thought, oh my God, when is it gonna stop? And I'm telling you, I did have some tears. I think having incredible mentors and people you can just reach out to, both in the personal and professional community, is amazing. Helena Odell at Freeman, one of the SVPs of sponsorship, or the SVP of sponsorship, has been an amazing resource. And she was reaching out to me on a daily basis, not just to, you know, make sure our business was intact, but to make sure that I as a person was doing okay and I had a safe place to bounce ideas off of and scream about things and just work through items. I had a really good support team at FinancialForce too. I think initially they were really nervous with the whole virtual event platform and idea, but our team, I mean, they put their heads down. We immediately knew what the goals and objectives were. We immediately knew that this had to be more than just what I call a webinar on steroids. You know, one person on my team went off and started sourcing the production companies and the online communities and finding the right tools. I had another person go off and really start working on content and how can we leverage what we already developed and created for the live event and repurpose it for the virtual event. And once we were able to really pull that plan together and share that with our executives and show them that we were confident in doing this based on all of our experiences, it was a seamless transition. And now they are so excited. Everyone is so excited. It's like the only, I won't say it's the only good news we have, but it is like one of the best things we have to talk about at FinancialForce right now. And it's something that the entire company's on board and supporting and are super encouraged and excited about.
It's awesome because, you know, really, like so many different groups of people, I think, through this didn't have any idea what they were doing or how to do it.
Yeah.
But somehow they did it. And they've launched it, and then they look and they go, holy S, like, oh my, this happened. We did it. And like, it just mean, like when asking for help, getting that help, and then getting the result has been sort of inspiring for people on a personal work level, like on an interaction level. I think people have had a very intense and very emotional time at work.
Yeah.
Throughout this process. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned before communities, and I'll let Sherry sort of go into that direction, but that's been a big interest of ours because people get fixated a lot on the medium and tools. Those are really a big deal because you have to relearn a new tool set. But in the end, I think we're all aligned that the big goal here is to maintain a relationship or a set of relationships. Yeah. So Sherry, I don't know if you want to move in that direction. Yeah.
Well, what considerations have you taken into place for moving your community from like going to Vegas, because everyone loves going to Vegas for the most part, having fun, but now you've got these communities online. How are you working to make that transition and to make it actually even more meaningful for them? Well, while you're looking for that, I will say, I think that relationships, you're probably one of the first people that we've talked to that's brought up relationships being important. And I truly agree with that. And I also think, like Itamar had mentioned too, like kind of wellness and well-being, because everyone's trying to do business as usual under the most unusual circumstances. And, you know, it's a Herculean effort, and it truly does take a village, including everyone's families. And whatnot. So that's pretty cool. Even the fact here, it's actually interesting because with Maker Faire, we touch a lot on educators, and been talking to a lot of educators as well about all of their transitions and what they're going through, and just even how hard it is for them to figure out how do you teach a class online
Yeah.
or even a hybrid class.
Yeah.
As we go into that. So you and your husband probably have very interesting discussions about this.
We do, although most of the time I'm like, I don't want to hear about your job, and he doesn't want to hear about my job. But you're right, we've had to really, I think, refocus at home, because at the beginning we were just working so many hours,
Right.
to the point where we weren't even standing up and getting proper meals.
Right.
And I think initially we thought this wasn't going to last forever. And then when it started getting longer and longer and longer, it was like, okay, we really have to figure out how to make this happen, right? Like my kids said, Mom, you can't keep sitting at the dining room table. You're driving us nuts and you're on the phone all the day. It's just, this is not working. So we had to find different ways to do it. I think the other challenge is on a personal front, like our kids don't have homework at night, even though they're in high school, junior high and high school, because they've been kind of working all day. And so we really have to make a concerted effort at 5:30 to power down all digital and focus on other things, focus on exercising, focus on making dinner, focus on being together as a family, not just going back online and being in front of a screen. So that's been a big change. That's been a big change, but I think a really positive one at the same time. I wanted to just talk a little bit more before we jump into the communities, because I have a lot to talk about there. Just more a little bit, Inamar, on my background. I think you mentioned a lot of the companies that I've worked for, from very far, very large Fortune 100 type companies, all the way down to running my own consulting practice for many years, and kind of being on both sides of the table, which I've appreciated. A lot of the background that I have in, for instance, running webinars or project management or just in basic event management has translated really nicely into figuring out how to work this virtual platform and this virtual program. Another thing is, a couple of years ago, I started volunteering at our church and learning how to become an executive producer for a really, really large church. And that's just been a personal challenge I wanted to take on. But just a couple minutes ago, we finished a Q2Q meeting for our virtual event with the Freeman team, and it was great. I knew exactly what they were talking about. I knew exactly, having their knowledge and my knowledge just brought the confidence level so much higher to know, like, okay, we don't have everything figured out, and that's okay, because sometimes we don't have stuff figured out 5 minutes before the show.
Gary and I have been saying to each other, I love hearing this so much, because we've been saying to each other, we should talk to churches. Who knows better how to maintain community and events and transfer stuff? Like, they've been on this. They've been like, the hybrid event has been the way of the church. I mean, certainly the large West Coast churches for a decade. Yeah.
And that's kind of one of them that we go to. So I've got tons of great people you could talk to, but in terms of the community building, I mean, they've been challenged and struggling with doing that, in a face-to-face type location, and now they're trying to do it in a virtual way and still maintaining social distance, still following the guidelines. Like, for instance, the county I live in Santa Clara County, we still have very, very, very stringent restrictions, kind of like you probably do in New York City. I mean, a lot of my friends in Texas and Oklahoma and all throughout the country, they're kind of like business back to normal, and I'm still thankful to go to the grocery store once a week. And that's about it.
Just to give you a taste of that, the doorman in my building put a sign up in both elevators that said, if you forgot your mask, turn around and go get it.
Yeah, exactly. We have them everywhere. We have them in our cars. We have them on the leash for the dog. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So back to the building the community. I mean, that was one of my big tenets for building out this virtual event with my team. And I've got team members I've got one who's been here at FinancialForce for a number of years. I've got one who's, pretty new in career, but man, is she just a little powerhouse. And then I've got one who's got amazing experience, both kind of like me, at large and at smaller companies. And we went in with the goal and expectation that this was not going to be a webinar on steroids, and that we were going to do more to really build community, because we know that's why people trudge all the way to Las Vegas for a week. It's not just a party and gamble, because we know our audiences don't do that. They're there to learn, they're there to network, they're there to grow their community, and they are there to find ways to enhance their careers. And so we had to find ways to translate doing that. So there were a number of attendee communication opportunities that when we started to partner with Freeman, they brought to our attention. And one that we really took advantage of is kind of an enhanced chat functionality where we can ask Q&A, we can do polling, we can have attendees go off and have sidebar type conversations. So we really felt that that was an investment that we wanted to make in our event. We also have a virtual exhibitor hall that our team actually has mainly created on our own. And we fortunately are able to integrate that into the online event pro platform with Freeman. So that was a cost savings measure on our part that our web team said, hey, we can build this out for you. Freeman was awesome that they could handle the integration of those systems. And now we have a great page within this platform for our attendees to learn and experience what our partners have to share. We have gifting and prize drawings, which we know everyone gets super excited about, but I didn't want to make it super complicated with a gamification. We had a lot of companies come and talk to us about how they could build these contests and promotions and get badges. And we've seen all that really super successful, for instance, at Dreamforce, but we're not Salesforce. So we can't make 1,000 bumper stickers with a million different cute animals on them. And we just kind of have to keep it simple. But going back to the idea that people are coming to these events to learn and develop in their careers, one of the things that we're raffling off are trainings as an incentive for people to learn. So they have a chance to win a training, a FinancialForce training. They have a chance to win a free registration to our live event next May in Las Vegas. They also have a chance to win some other really fun, cool prizes, which I'm not going to share quite yet. We have some user groups. We have a really strong customer community that our community team spends, and our CSMs spend a ton of time building and enhancing and just loving on constantly. So they're coming to the plate, and we're offering 14 different topics for user groups in our event. And I'm really excited to see how people engage and participate in that. We even had a request today that came up with our new CEO on a call that just this morning about, you know, if we're not sending our prospects to these user groups for customers, how are we meeting their needs? Can we do virtual demos? And one of the best things I love about these virtual events is that not a lot's set in stone. There's flexibility and there's feasibility to do a lot. And so I even told our team this morning, keep coming to us with ideas, keep coming to us with questions, bring your hard ideas to us, and let's see how we can solve it. Because if it's just opening up another community online, if it's opening up another chat channel, if it's having a different type of raffle or having a different type of engagement strategy, we can build that out pretty quickly. We don't have to get a conference room. We don't have to order food. We don't have to make sure the AV works. That's all happening already, and it's already in place.
I find it fascinating that for the longest time, for example, in the TV production world, production value was sort of how we judged how good something was. Mm-hmm. Like, how polished was the bumper? Whoa, look at that, you know, opening credits, you know, like the whole thing was somehow judging a thing by what it flashed at you. And it feels like now the world is divided in this moment of crisis. Half the world is like, we have to make perfect television. We have to pre-record, edit, fly the crews out, do the thing. Backgrounds have to be one background. Everything needs to look like a bank. It's got to look perfect. And then there's a growing group of people at large companies as well, such as yours and larger companies that are like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like the production value is not the point. The content and the relationship is the point. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because when you look at so many other things that have now gained viral popularity among the kids, it's not about the high production value. The Twitches, the different servers, the different communication. It's about the content. It's about being able to have access to the group of people that you want to have access to at the time that you want to have access to them.
I agree. I think it's 100% community, and it goes back to content is king.
Yeah,
I think
it really does.
All in amazement when the shelter in place started. I couldn't believe I was laying in bed one morning watching CBS Morning News, and I am looking at Gayle King in her living room, and that suddenly was okay.
Right.
And then somebody else is broadcasting from his basement because he doesn't want to wake his family up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that was suddenly okay. And so the paradigm completely shifted. And even when we were in the production stages with our executives, when I first said, hey guys, we're just going to do this from your home. We're going to send you this amazing speaker kit with this great camera, and you're going to have a light, and you're going to look great, and microphone. We're going to help you get it all set up with IT. And they were like, no, we're not. No, we're not. I mean, one guy, he's got a house full of kids, so I get it. He said, really, I'm going to need a separate location that's quiet with high bandwidth connectivity. Fine, got it. Then some of our executives said, I really want to shoot this in a studio. I will feel most comfortable if I can do this in a studio. Well, when we found out that many studios here in the Bay Area were closed due to the shelter in place, and we would have to potentially travel 2 to 3 hours and still pay Bay Area prices for studios, it changed the conversation quickly. So we'll see how it goes.
And then you realize, like, if a TV network sees that Trevor Noah is getting the same number of hits from his living room as he is from the who knows what they spend on that New York studio.
Correct.
Are you not going to be like, why are we renting that New York studio for $30 million a year?
Right.
Like,
so I think there's so much that's going to change. I mean, for me, I haven't been in events that long. So my background is mainly in integrated marketing and global campaigns. My transition to events just happened a couple years ago while I was working at Pure Storage. So I'm learning, and the thing I love the most is that I'm constantly challenged. I feel like half the time I'm not always sure what I'm doing, but it seems to work out because I'm really good at asking a lot of questions. However, as we move potentially back to live events, I truly believe that virtual events will be here to stay, and that people and customers and attendees will now have the expectation that a live event can be set up. That's fine, but my manager is not going to authorize me to go to New York City for a week. So how can I still attend and get the same level of participation and engagement and community from a virtual environment?
100%. It seems like
to figure out. And I love it. I love it because that's the challenge I'm signed up for.
I mean, remember when the MP3 came out and everyone was making CDs, and the industry sort of said, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter that they can get the free music. It's actually not very good. It doesn't sound very good. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? It sounded good enough for free.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an interesting thing, that the live events will, of course, come back, but they're going to need to really be about value.
Mm-hmm. And what people, I think a whole nother level that we have to take into consideration is people's level of safety and security and where their comfort is. So for instance, when all those horrible things were happening in Las Vegas, and the shootings and stuff, I know event managers and directors and producers really had to build in security plans for these large type conferences. And when I was just starting in the events industry, I thought, oh gosh, this is horrible. This is like just as bad as having security on school campuses. But unfortunately, it's what has to happen. Now we have to think for safety measures and what the social distancing requirements will be set by the, for instance, county health regulators. But That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is, what are people comfortable with? What are they personally comfortable with? Are you comfortable getting on a plane? Are you comfortable sitting in a room with 600 other people? Are you comfortable staying in a hotel? There's going to be a lot more to take into consideration. And I think businesses too aren't going to really feasibly want to take on that level of risk if they don't have to with their employees.
I think that's right. And you know, people get spooked at different process for each person. Suddenly you never knew anyone, and then you hear that someone got sick, and it doesn't make it any more or less dangerous objectively, but it suddenly makes you not be able to have fun getting on an airplane. Like, it just makes you feel like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of just going, you know, seeing the rhythms and providing people alternatives that allow them to get some value by staying home that is really at the core of it, and then to use that group so that the live event becomes in the service almost down the line. It's the meeting of the group of people that otherwise could only interact digitally versus the digital thing is just a support channel for the live meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're even seeing that with our registration numbers, for instance. We are at 2 times what our end goal was, and we're still 2.5 weeks out from the event. And I think we've really hit a couple points here. First of all, people are home and they've got time. Secondly, people want to learn and engage and build their community. Thirdly, people are bored, so they're looking for ways to build their knowledge and just connect and contribute in those types of environments. And lastly, a lot of this content is free. So suddenly you can still do your day job. You don't have to go to your manager and get authorization to attend an expensive conference, but you can still go and learn best practices, learn ways to enhance your career development, learn a new way to implement our software or a solution or a tool set, and in the end look like a rock star. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah, interesting.
So true. There's such an opportunity there by providing that quality rather than feeling like it's something you should have charged for but didn't.
Yeah.
It actually is a way of really securing that customer through that relationship. Yeah.
Right. And seeing the ROI and the value that comes out from these types of events, I think is going to be a very, very interesting metric to watch over time.
You know, Julie, there was always this thing in business where they used to say, and I'm a big believer in 5 senses design. Like, I'm a big believer that when people are looking at each other face to face, it's different than when you're even on a screen. There's a different thing. And I'm not going to go into a whole hem and haw about that. But the question I have is, people would always say, you know, if a salesperson says your name, if a salesperson touches you on the shoulder, that actually is changing the likelihood of your transaction. It's reducing the barrier to purchase. And I guess what I'm saying is, from a transaction basis, which in the end is what all of these events, at least historically, have been driven by. That they weren't only that, but that was a big piece of it. There was a bunch of business getting done at these things. Is that something that you feel is going to be fine? Is that something that is going to somehow get hurt by the lack of that touch and face-to-face? How do you think, like, in terms of estimates, not just for the signups, but for the actual conversions? Do you feel like that's going to be very different because it's not a live event and they're not captive in the same way?
I want to say no, but my gut is yes. My gut is yes.
That'll be a very interesting learning, right?
It
to know how those things track. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it really ties into, for instance, how my campaigns team here at FinancialForce takes all of this amazing content that we create and repurposes it. It involves our BDR team. How are they reaching out to attendees? How are they reaching out to people who registered but weren't able to attend? How are they able to continue the conversation enough that we can get a meeting set up with an AE? So it's not, I like to say, you know, we've got to continue ways to continue the conversation. So it's not just the event is not just the event. The event is one medium in the entire communications plan and proliferation of content. So where do we go next? And I like that handoff. I've been a part of that handoff. I've led those campaigns, so I know what happens and I know what needs to happen. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And we have a wonderful opportunity to track and resource and review and analyze all of those metrics. And it's going to be very interesting to watch over the next 12 to 18 months by far.
Super interesting. Yeah, I have no idea. I get what you're saying. And I feel like if you came back in 2 months and said to us, it was so weird, it was, again, double the amount of business we did before. Like, I would also not be shocked. Like, it just seems like it's just hard to know how it's all going to play out in a certain way. Yeah.
Well, but we've had conversations with our inside sales team, and they've said that conversations are harder now that people are home. Businesses are slowing down a little bit. Corporate commitments are slowing down, and we're seeing it across the board, not just smaller SMBs, but within the commercial and the enterprise. Everyone's getting a lot more hesitant and tight with their finances, and it only makes sense. People are also scared to keep their jobs, right? So this might not be the best time to make a recommendation to do a new tool implementation. It might just be better to stay with the status quo. And that's made us change some of our marketing strategies as well to make sure that we reduce churn and we keep the customers that we have incredibly happy and satisfied.
Oh,
sounds
great.
very smart. Very smart.
So you're 2 weeks out, roughly, from your big event. What are some of the things that you're thinking and actually, just trying to, put in place? I know that when I'm doing an event, I can feel it in my body, like when we're 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, like I just kind of kick into gear and know what needs to be done.
Yeah.
This time with 2 weeks, and there's always things you can't do. At this time, I'm 2 weeks, I'm kind of like, okay, great idea, I'm going to have to implement next time. But this is just like, it's so game changing. Like,
Yeah.
there's no rule, so anything can really go. And it's kind of an interesting time, and just curious what you're thinking. And I'm sure it's lots of things, but.
Yeah, we've got a lot of challenges. I finished working last Friday, and I kind of looked at my husband, and he kind of looked at me and said, "It's go time, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, the next 2.5 weeks are just going to be insane. So get ready." And we've got to temper that now that we're home too. Like when you're in the office and you can kind of rant and rave, it's a little different than being home and all, you don't want to kick the dog and slam the door. So kind of
like when I get really upset, my wife says to me, she goes, "You got 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, you got to be better."
Yeah, you get a timeout.
Like she said, you can be grumpy for 45 minutes. That's the max.
No.
I can't handle any more than that,
But yeah, it's just different. As much as I thought I would never say this, I actually miss my commute because it was kind of that time to detox. Now you don't get that. You go from like downstairs to upstairs, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's such a brain change with such a limited amount of time to just process everything. That's really been a struggle.
And everything's channel switched anyway. It's like 1 week is impeachment, the next week is death epidemic, the next week is revolution, the next week is like, it's like, what are we supposed to do? They just keep changing the channel.
Right. Murder hornets and zombie apocalypse. And
yes, exactly.
So, for the events team, like we're rocking and rolling. We're having a great time. We're hitting deadlines with Freeman. There's the inevitable, like, oh, who's doing the intro video? Wait, we have to do an intro video? You're not doing the intro video? All the guests will do there's the inevitable. That stuff is starting to kind of bubble up a little bit, but I already know that's going to happen. So I'm trying to remain calm about that. Right. Just budget stuff, just meeting expectations. I feel like I spend a lot of time communicating up and out, making sure everyone's happy. On top of that, my manager resigned last week, so I have a new boss.
Responsibility.
We have a new CMO. So bringing him up to speed and bringing his confidence level where ours is, it just takes time. But it's part of the job. And like I said, it's part of the challenge, which I love.
Yep. I have a
Also
question.
seems like you're so good at being informal. You're just a very warm, informal person. And I feel like the informality helps get through this time in a certain way, where it's just people talking to people and the hierarchies and the rules and the approvals and all of that. Like there isn't as much infrastructure for that. So you just got to kind of wing it.
You do. And I think the better we can communicate up front, whereas back in the days when we were in the office, I felt like, okay, we would have a meeting about that. And now it's like, I'm going to send you not a PowerPoint. I'm going to send you a deck of my incremental asks and why I need them. And I need to know like by end of day today. And we can get it. We can get it because people are just moving so much faster and, with much more functionality.
One of the crazy things is how people at big enterprises showed how fast they could run.
Yeah, I agree.
People can kick butt. I mean, these people can change, work, pivot. I mean, really impressive, right? Just the speed.
Well, and it's really helped too that we've been able to learn from other companies on what to do and what not to do. What I thought was so interesting when we were all starting to get into this shelter in place was how fast these companies were popping out these virtual events. And it almost seemed like one of their metrics was, we were able to do this in 3 weeks. We were able to do this in 3 days. We were able to do this in 3 hours. And so when I was proposing this event to our executive team with my team, one of our arguments was, let's not do this right away. There's so much of a concentrated effort for people to engage in these events that I wanted to make sure there was no overlap, especially with our competitors or people in our, industrial alliances.
And a chance to learn from other people's mistakes.
And we have learned a ton, and that has been fun. That has been very enlightening, and that has brought to light some of the things we were missing. For instance, a couple of weeks ago, I sat through kind of a virtual event webinar, best practices through CEMA, the Corporate Event Marketing Association. It was very influential, very helpful. And I came out of it and went, oh my gosh, we don't have a theme for this event. We don't have really solidified metrics and goals for this event. We got to get that going. So it's been helpful. But having a little time to breathe and do this right has been the world to us.
Well, gosh, so good. You are just a few weeks out from your event, and so we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. Hopefully you'll come back after the event and we can have a conversation and you can tell us everything that you learned, because it's just one of those things. And I think that we're learning so much just even chatting with you, and I think you're going to give confidence to others that you can do this. And it's okay. There's no right way or wrong way right now. And so the fun part is just, let's kind of go with all of our instincts and make it happen. And
we're just
also, I think one of the takeaways for me is you're a real embracer of change. And I think most people hate it.
Yeah. It is. It's hard. And there's just been, I think, one of the biggest challenges of this whole horrific coronavirus of what we've all lived through is that people just don't know what to expect and they don't know what next. And that sometimes this might be the first time in people's lives where they don't know what's next, and not having that semblance of control is very, 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 very hard. I myself am a uber control freak, but I've also learned that there are many things out of my control that you just have to let go. And trust people, hire the best and brightest. My global events team are rock stars. Our account team at Freeman are just phenomenal. And we are just all working together like one big, happy family. And I don't just say that lightly, because we've all been in those unhappy families.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Right.
No, collaboration is key right now. And
Yeah. So we're super excited. Like
yeah.
really no worries. I'm super excited.